We're back, and we're here with Terry Pratchett, whose latest novel, Thud, from HarperCollins, is in bookstores now. Welcome back to Fast Forward.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
It's good to see you again. Well, now, since the last time we've talked, Going Postal, which we discussed briefly in our last interview, is been in bookstores, has sold marvelously, and now we have another Discworld novel, which once again features one of the more familiar characters of the Discworld, Samuel Vimes. And it's a fascinating novel. Now, Thud has a number of different meanings.
It's a good name for a book, isn't it? Because you're tempting fate. You've really got to sell well with a book called Thud.
You have to be confident of the content of the book to have a title like that.
Yeah, I suppose I kind of reached a point in my career when it was kind of a what the heck decision. Besides, also it's nice. It's a nice square title. It's got an exclamation mark on it as well.
Exactly.
It's good value for money.
And what I have liked about this book a lot is that besides watching Commander Vimes once again save the world, we get to catch up on a lot of other people we know of from the Discworld, here, there, and everywhere, as everyone's running about.
Can I just correct you there? He most decidedly doesn't save the world. What he does do is give the world time to save itself, which is very much more of a Discworld way of doing things. Just dropping a ring into a volcano does not do it on Discworld, but it's the start of the process that might.
Exactly. And we also get to see the development of his relationship with his young son. And some of the most enjoyable passages are the descriptions of Sam and his determination to get back home at 6 p.m. every evening, no matter what, so he can read to him one book, Where's My Cow? And it's just it's like it's his anchor now. For himself.
Yeah,
for him being Sam Vimes rather than being Commander Vimes, rather than being, this person who has to involve himself. This is the part of the world that he never explored before.
I think that, I've heard it said about coppers that after they have kids, their view of the world changes because they're policing the world for their kids, and so their attitude to various things does change. It was a lot of fun to do because the very first occasion when he has to get home at 6 o'clock and in no way will he ever allow himself to be late. It effectively ends up jamming the whole of the traffic in the city during the rush hour as well, but Sam Vimes actually does get home in time. And that was kind of, it worked for me as it worked for him. You have something in the book which is absolutely, you cannot get around. This has got to happen at certain points in the plot. And one of the few occasions where I ever worked out the book's timeline, how long would it take to do this? Would it be 6 o'clock by now? just like he would do.
But also, young Sam is also his salvation in a number of ways because it's the place where he stops everything else, and all he is in this one place with his son, doing this thing that he needs to do for his son every day. In several instances, it's almost like it's the only way he can get relief from the things that are going on around him.
Well, Sam Vimes is not gifted with a huge intellect, but he's got an incredibly dogged mind. And I think he's played for a fool by lots of people, not least of which Lord Vetinari. But when you get Sam Vimes on the trail, there is nothing that's going to turn him off it.
Yeah, I love the phrase you use. He may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer. Matter of fact, he may be the spoon, but
he'll keep going. He'll actually keep going. Yeah.
And he has his moments. I mean, he is able at one point to completely flummox Lord Vetinari. I mean, it's one of the few times we've ever seen that august and sage gentleman just absolutely stunned. And I found that very enjoyable in a very perverse way.
Oh yes. Well, Vimes can read people fairly well, and I enjoyed the whole series with the government inspector, the man that's sent out to check whether the watch is actually good value for the city's taxes, and that whole sequence was rather fun.
So you got to understand the dynamic. It's not just the X's and the O's. It's the dynamic and the history. It's more of a tapestry than it is a set of columns that you balance out.
Yeah, I think it is, but it's right. It's absolutely right for Sam Vimes that he's not. I mean, he gets it. He's now technically he's a duke, and the watch is bigger, but he doesn't get rewards, and that's exactly what makes him work. And when he's telling all his officers that we're all going to have to work double shifts, and there may be overtime payments, but they may not, but you'll get a lovely warm feeling, and I don't care if you don't. And they know he's going to be working alongside them in the same way.
Yeah.
And that's how he can live. I don't actually think he'd work well if he was getting a hearty pat on the shoulder all the time. He kind of likes being under that kind of pressure, I believe.
Yeah, the pats on the shoulder actually kind of irritate him.
Yes,
times,
exactly. Yes.
And actually, the only one he'll take a pat on the shoulder with, and that's with a great deal of suffering, is from his wife, who loves collecting documentation of all of his accomplishments and achievements.
Yes, and all the political cartoons of him that appear in the newspaper. So he has to send the butler down before she does, so he can buy them and destroy the originals before she gets them. It was nice to see him it was nice to write him as the family man. But at the same time, you've got to keep a plot going that new readers can actually follow. But that's kind of the fun thing with Discworld. I mean, it's Vimes as a family man, and we can anyone with kids and many people without kids can understand a lot of what's going on. It's got nothing to do with fantasy. In fact, an awful lot, more than I actually originally expected in that book, has got little to do with fantasy. Okay, there are names like trolls and dwarves and vampires in there, but they could just be convenient labels.
Exactly. You examine them as people, and you examine their relationships with maybe some special circumstances, semi-immortal beings trying to deal with the world as it changes. And I wonder is that harder, do you think, than it is for ordinary people, where the world goes by so fast? When something goes by relatively slowly over eons, does it make it harder?
I think it does when you suddenly look around and you hadn't realised how changed it had become. But the thing that kind of pulled me up. I mean, the book was written probably about finished 7 months ago, and it was of its time. And then we had 7/7, the bombs in London on the tube and on buses and so forth. And we have a large Muslim community, and there was a certain amount of people looking around and saying, "Hey, where have we got to now?" Why? And I thought, when that happened, I remembered that there's in Thud exactly the same thing has happened, but it's between dwarves and trolls, and I'm not saying that they equate. It is between people who are in fact dwarves and trolls, but Vimes finds himself in the same circumstances. Can I really trust you? I've trusted you up till now, but did you say yes to the atrocity, or did you just refrain from saying no?
And there's also his worry about the rest of the city. Once they find out what's happened, will they be able to deal with or will they categorize them as the other, the ones to be afraid of?
It's a domino, but we know about this sort of thing, and everything whirls straight down the sinkhole, and no one trusts anyone else, and the first person to blink starts the war.
Yeah, or the first person to trip and fall, and someone thinks they're actually trying to come after them, and all that.
I think that's why I mentioned, he doesn't exactly change the world. It won't come as any great surprise to my readers that at the end things aren't better than they were, but what they do have is an opportunity to be better. Thousands of years or hundreds of years of hatred don't stop with a handshake, but the process of ending those thousands of years might begin with a handshake, and then everyone backs away, and as days go by, the possibility that you can get along without fighting gradually gets stronger.
Now, before we finish this interview, I want to talk about one thing that's happened because of Thud. Now, if we talked about Sam's appointment with his son, and his reasoning is, you can't miss it for any reason, because even if it's a good reason, that means he could miss it. And then all of a sudden, perhaps there isn't quite as good a reason that he could miss it, and he doesn't want to go down that hill.
And you can't be a second late, because if you can be a second late, you could be 5 seconds late. And what the hell, what half a minute's not going to be bad. And the point is, it wouldn't be too bad, and his son probably wouldn't notice. But then it would be even later, and then one evening you couldn't do it at all because you were so busy, and then the whole thing collapses.
And he spent so much time getting the sounds right. Why would he want to stop?
You better explain to people that the book is Where's My Cow is almost the kind of quintessential children's book, and it's full of farmyard noises. Not just farmyard noises, actually, and Vines can actually get all the noises exactly right. And we actually brought out the book.
And that's what I wanted to show, is Where's My Cow by Terry Pratchett, a Discworld picture book for people of all sizes. It's even won an award already. It's won the winner of the Ankh-Morph Librarians Award for Children, and has the quintessential gold seal with the paired bananas and ook across it, as the librarian has formally
I've always wanted a gold seal on one of my books, and by Jove, I've got it now. But the fun thing was, and I mean, I think kids will actually like this, that this is the book that he reads, but it's also the book about him reading the book that he reads. And it kind of...
he does stray once, and you know, when he starts adding a few little things.
Oh, yes, but what I mean was that when you actually see him taking down from the shelf the actual book which you yourself are reading, I like the paradoxes in there, which were a lot of fun. And in fact, it wasn't my suggestion. My editor read the book and said, "We've got to publish Where's My Cow?" Great.
What's really fascinating about this is the first time in the U.S. We had talked last time about how all of a sudden we've come to realize that we have this treasure that we just haven't properly appreciated. This is the first time that we've had, I would guess you'd say, a spin-off or an ancillary item from one of your novels.
Ancillary is the word I prefer. Yeah.
And basically made available as a part of a publishing effort in the U.S. I mean, in the U.K. it's happened a number of times, but this is the first time in the U.S.
Well, I get fairly kind of like uptight about it, because if it's written down about Discworld, then I've had a major input, if not the major input, to it. You know, the same with the Discworld diaries and Nanny Ogg's cookbook and various other things. And I look upon them as canonical. They're all part of the same thing. They're just kind of different outcrops of the ongoing Discworld toothpaste as it pushed out of the tube. So I don't really think of them exactly as spin-offs. And I mean, I wrote that, all 700 words. It's a great life writing picture books.
But besides Thud, which is a delight, and I really enjoyed it, and saw so many old friends, because in Going Postal you had made the, and by the way, Going Postal is now a phrase in the Discworld.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Good heavens.
These things move along, you see.
Yes, and the stamps are now, special issues are flying out of the post office like no one's business, including commemorating things that Commander Vines would rather not be commemorated.
Yes, but the curious thing is, in the real world, that's happening. You've heard of Stanley Gibbons, like the worldwide experts on postage stamps, and they wrote to myself and to Bernard Pearson, who actually produces the stamps, like as real stamps, with real press and copper engraving and everything, thanking us for revitalising philately. And I mean, thousands of the stamps are selling off his website, and people collect them and trade them.
Oh my God!
And I sit there thinking, look, these, they don't only work in Ankh-Morpork. Although I've had fan letters sent to me using Discworld stamps, which have got through the mail.
Fantastic.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of strange too, because they cost more than the equivalent stamp would. So the fan is probably losing a bit of money on the deal. But it really is very strange.
But we talk about the current novel, but with you, we always have to talk about what's coming next, because we're gritty little beggars, and we're always looking for the next book.
Well, now I'm trying to settle down to one book a year. It probably will end up as 2 books every 3 years, and simply because I'm getting older, I want to get a life before it's too late, and also because I have to do lots of tours and things, and I suddenly realised that I don't actually have to write 2 books every year. There's no law So I'm working on the third book in what will probably be the 4-book trilogy about Tiffany Aiken and the We Free Men.
One of my favorites.
Next
One of
year.
my favorites.
Well, thank
She's
you.
I read one of your books with Tiffany, and I come away feeling so much better about the world in general.
Well, perhaps that's a good thing, and perhaps it isn't. I don't know. But I finished writing one, and I feel like that. And I have a lot of fun because they're different. They are clearly Discworld books, and they're set in what's called, I suppose you could call the Discworld mythos. But they are different because she's such a solemn little character. But now she's getting, she's hit 13. Her mental processes are not quite so measured as they used to be, and that makes her more fun. That's why aging a character is fun.
And so we have that to look forward to. I can't tell you how much I enjoy reading her, because you also give us the opportunity to see other characters we become familiar with in the mythos in a completely different light.
Nanny Ogg, seen from Tiffany Aiken's point of view, is clearly the same person, but a different character than the Nanny Ogg of the adult books.
And as you've said before, you take a slightly different approach, a more measured approach to writing her books because of the audience that they're being marketed to. Initially, you're more careful, I believe, is the word.
Yes, I think so. I mean, what I've always said is, if you put in a throwaway joke about the Beatles, for most of the audience, it's genuinely thrown away. In fact, probably to the parents of most of the audience, it's thrown away. But I don't think you necessarily have to use a particularly simple vocabulary or something like that.
So Thud now, which is a great read and a terrific story, and has something literally, I think, for everyone in terms of whatever your favorite part of the Discworld is. There's a bit of it here somewhere. Trust me. Where's My Cow, which is. My wife loves it. She just thought it was a wonderful book. And
it is. I think it's a gem. I just, I pick it up occasionally and look at it.
And in a year or so, another story of Tiffany and her adventures as she grows into herself. We're almost out of time. And Terry, thank you so much for coming by again. We feel so joyful that you're here, because it took us so long to get you on, and it's always a pleasure every time. And so thank you again for coming by.
Thank you, Tom.
Well, that's it for this edition of Fast Forward. Hope you've enjoyed yourself. Hope you'll come see us again. Until then, take care.